We don't serve your kind here." The words sliced through the noise of clinking forks and background jazz like a butcher's knife. Conversations halted. Glasses froze midway to lips. Forks paused inches from plates. Clarissa Jenkins stood there, stunned, a woman in her early 50s, elegant in a maroon dress, pearls glinting faintly under the chandelier lights of Le Chateau, one of the most exclusive restaurants in downtown Charleston. Her brown eyes, once glowing with warmth, now stared in disbelief at the man who had uttered those words, the waiter, a tall, slick-haired man in a crisp black uniform. Didn't blink. He stood stiff, his notepad tucked under one arm like a judge delivering a sentence. His name tag read Greg. What did you just say to me?" Clarissa asked, her voice trembling, not with fear but with that deep, rising fury that comes when you've lived a life of quiet dignity only to be slapped in the face by centuries-old venom. "I said," Greg repeated, louder, for the entire restaurant to hear, "we don't serve people like you." Someone at a corner table gasped. A man coughed awkwardly. A group of white patrons nearby glanced at one another nervously. No one moved, no one spoke. Clarissa clenched her jaw, her hands trembling slightly as she placed her clutch purse on the table. Her voice, quiet but firm, filled the space around them. "I made a reservation, under Jenkins, for two. My son is meeting me here." Greg smirked. "You can wait outside if you want. Or try the diner down the block." Clarissa's breath caught in her throat. A single sharp breath. She was about to speak no, to rise, to leave, to hold her head high as she always had, no matter what, but then, "Is there a problem here?" The voice was calm, smooth, deep. It didn't boom, but it didn't need to. A young black man in a fitted navy suit stood at the edge of the dining area. He walked with purpose, his presence undeniable, tall, athletic, confident. His eyes, burning with controlled rage, met Greg's instantly. Clarissa turned toward him, relief and pride flooding her face. Aaron Jenkins, 32 years old, graduate of Harvard Law, CEO of an up-and-coming tech startup, son of Clarissa Jenkins, raised by a single mother who scrubbed floors, worked night shifts, skipped meals to send him to school. The boy who watched his mother iron uniforms for rich white families while never letting bitterness touch her voice. The man who remembered every insult they swallowed for decades and who was done being silent. Greg looked him up and down. "This your mother?" he asked, as though the word were foreign. Aaron nodded. Slowly, purposefully. "Yes, and you're going to apologize." Greg scoffed. "You people always playing the victim." Aaron took a single step forward, not aggressive, but definitive. Every pair of eyes in the restaurant followed him like gravity. "Say that again," Aaron said. Greg hesitated. He looked around. No backup, no management in sight. Just patrons watching, some uncomfortable, some pretending to eat. Aaron glanced at the hostess stand. "Where's your manager?" A young hostess, probably 19, stood frozen, pale, scared. She looked like she wanted to help but didn't know how. I'll get him," she stammered, and scurried off. Clarissa placed a gentle hand on her son's arm. "Aaron, it's okay. We can go." He didn't move. He kept his gaze locked on Greg. "No, ma, not this time." The restaurant was dead silent now. "I don't care what this place serves," Aaron said, raising his voice. "Just enough. I don't care if the chef was flown in from Paris or if the wine costs $500 a bottle. What I care about is that my mother, who raised me, who sacrificed everything for me, walked in here with dignity and was humiliated for the color of her skin. In 2025, murmurs." A couple people nodded. Someone near the bar whispered, "Damn right." Greg was starting to sweat now. "Look, man, I'm just following policy." "There is no policy that says you can discriminate," Aaron snapped. "That's illegal, that's immoral, that's pathetic." At that moment, the manager rushed in, a short, balding man in his 40s, panting slightly. "What's going on?" he asked, breathless. Aaron turned to him. "You tell me." The hostess whispered in the manager's ear. His face paled. Mr. Jenkins, tall, please. I'm so sorry. We absolutely do serve everyone. Greg here is very new. He's misunderstood the tone of this establishment. Misunderstood. Aaron raised an eyebrow. Your employee told my mother you don't serve people like her. That's not a misunderstanding. That's hatred. The manager's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Please, let's handle this quietly. Maybe I can offer you a complimentary meal. Aaron laughed bitterly. A free steak isn't going to fix this. Then he stepped onto a small raised platform beside the wine display. He looked over the entire dining room. My name is Aaron Jenkins, he said. I'm the CEO of blatantly, the company that powers over half the digital payment systems used in restaurants across this city, including this one. The gasps were audible. My mother came here today because I wanted to treat her, celebrate her. Because everything I am, everything I've achieved is because of her. And instead, she was told her presence was unacceptable. He turned to Greg. I don't need a table here. What I need is for you to understand something. Racism isn't always burning crosses. Sometimes it's wearing a name tag and deciding who's worthy of basic respect. The room was dead silent. Then a woman near the bar stood up. She was white, mid-60s. She looked at Clarissa and said, I'm so sorry. That should never have happened. A man at another table added, he should be fired. A couple, arm in arm, got up and left, placing their untouched menus on the table. Then more voices joined. We're with you. This is disgusting. I'm canceling our reservation. The manager looked like he was about to collapse. Greg, he quietly stepped back toward the kitchen, vanishing. Aaron helped his mother to her seat. We'll eat elsewhere, he told the manager. And I'll be issuing a public statement tonight. He took Clarissa's hand, and they turned to leave. But before they reached the door, someone began clapping. A slow, solemn clap. Then another joined, and another. Within seconds, the entire restaurant erupted into applause. Not the polite, weak kind, but the thunderous, rising kind, the kind that shakes walls. Clarissa stopped. Her eyes filled. She looked at her son, pride swelling in her chest. And in that moment, Aaron didn't just shock the restaurant. He reminded everyone of what standing up really meant. The applause faded as the heavy glass door shut behind them. Outside, the spring air was cool and tinged with ocean salt from Charleston Bay. Clarissa wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders as Aaron walked beside her in silence. He opened the car door for her, his usual gesture, and she got in slowly, her eyes distant. Only once he settled in the driver's seat did she speak. You didn't have to do that, she said. Almost a whisper. I've dealt with worse. Aaron turned to her, his jaw clenched. That's exactly why I had to. She looked away. Her hand rested over his on the gear shift. I didn't raise you to fight every battle. He paused, and then answered softly. You raised me to finish the ones that matter. They drove for several minutes in silence. The lights of downtown Charleston flickering through the windshield. Where to now? He asked gently. Clarissa smiled, weakly. You know where. 20 minutes later, they were seated at Maya's Soul Kitchen, a small, cozy restaurant nestled between two old buildings on the edge of North King Street. No chandeliers, no white tablecloths, just laughter, jazz, and the smell of cornbread and smoked turkey legs. Maya, the owner, a stocky, vibrant woman with silver dreadlocks, rushed out from the kitchen when she saw them. Lord have mercy, she cried, arms outstretched. Clarissa Jenkins, you walk in here looking like Michelle Obama on Easter Sunday. And Aaron, baby, how's my future mayor? Aaron grinned and hugged her tight. Still dodging politics, Miss Maya. Maya pulled back and studied Clarissa. You okay, honey? You look like you seen a ghost. Clarissa chuckled dryly. Not a ghost, just history repeating itself. Maya raised an eyebrow. Say no more. She turned to one of her servers. Bring out the good cornbread, the real kind. As they sat and began eating, the story poured out slowly at first. Then all at once, Maya listened, eyes narrowed. When Aaron told her what Greg had said, her fists balled up. See, That's what happens when they let anybody wear a tie and call themselves a waiter. Aaron leaned back in his chair. I don't want to just expose him. I want this to mean something. A statement, maybe a lawsuit, maybe more. Clarissa looked up from her plate. Baby, that'll put a target on your back. He met her gaze. Good. Let them aim. That night, Aaron went home and opened his laptop. The headline he typed for his LinkedIn post was simple. My mother was told, we don't serve people like you today. Here's what I did. He wrote about the incident, the words, the silence, the confrontation, the applause. And then he wrote this. My mother scrubbed hospital floors at night and read me poetry by day. She showed me what grace under pressure looks like. Today, she was humiliated by a man who looked at her and saw less. I stood up, not because I'm a CEO, but because I'm her son. If you're tired of the silence around subtle racism in everyday places, join me. He posted it, went to bed, and woke up to war. By morning, the post had gone viral, 6.3 million views, over 200.00 shares, thousands of comments, from strangers, from celebrities, from former employees of Le Chateau. I worked at that place. Racism isn't just Greg, it's in the management too. Thank you for speaking up. Too many of us stay quiet. Where can I donate to support a legal response? Media outlets started calling like CNN, NPR, MSNBC. Even Trevor Noah reshared the post with the caption, Moms like Clarissa built this country. She deserves filet mignon and respect. Aaron's assistant, Sarah, knocked on his apartment door with coffee and wide eyes. You broke the internet. I didn't try to, Aaron muttered. But maybe you needed to, she said, dropping a folder on his kitchen table. Legal team drafted options. Also, Channel 7 wants an exclusive. And this is weird. One of the investors from Le Chateau called. Wants to talk. Aaron froze. What investor? Paul Reynolds. Big name. Real estate guy, apparently. His wife saw your post and, well, he's pissed. Later that afternoon, Aaron met Reynolds at a rooftop bar downtown. The man was tanned, sharp-suited, late 50s, with a handshake that lingered like a threat. I'm not going to lie, Reynolds said, sitting across from him. Your little story just cost us $100,000 in cancellations. Aaron sipped his water calmly. Good, Reynolds chuckled. You've got balls. I've got a mother who was humiliated. The man leaned in. Let's cut the crap. You want something. Everyone who goes viral wants something. Is it money? An apology? A platform? Aaron smiled coolly. None of the above. Then what? Aaron took out a small folder and slid it across the table. I want you to fund a scholarship for young black students in Charleston. Call it the Clarissa Foundation. No PR, no branding, just impact. Reynolds opened the folder, skimmed the proposal. And if I say no, Aaron leaned forward, voice low, then I buy a controlling stake in your payment processor next quarter. And every restaurant that uses Blaze Tech gets a new public rating score, equality certified or not. Your restaurant won't pass. Reynolds stared at him, blinked, then laughed. You really are your mother's son. The following week, a press release hit the wires. Clarissa Foundation launches to support black youth education in Charleston, funded by the Reynolds Trust, inspired by a mother's strength. At the official launch gala, held in a public park instead of a ballroom, Clarissa stood at the podium. She wore the same maroon dress, same pearls, same pride. I never wanted attention, she said into the microphone. I only ever wanted dignity. That day, I thought I'd just walk away quietly, like I've done so many times before. But my son stood up, and in doing so, he reminded me, and maybe reminded all of us, that silence is not strength. That sometimes the world doesn't change until we demand it to. Aaron stood behind her, hand over heart, and across the crowd, white, black, young, old, a sea of hands clapped until palms burned. The Clarissa Foundation took off faster than anyone expected. Within the first month, they'd raised over $1, 2 million, mostly from small donors who had read Aaron's post or watched Clarissa's viral speech at the park. Emails poured in daily from teachers, single parents, and even kids themselves thanking them for the hope it brought. But not everyone was pleased. Greg, the waiter, had disappeared from public view. At first, Aaron hadn't given it much thought. The man deserved to lose his job. Actions had consequences. But then the messages started. Anonymous emails, threatening comments. A brick thrown through the front window of Clarissa's modest house one night while she was out. Aaron installed cameras, security, even offered to move her into one of his properties. But she refused. "I'm not running, Aaron," she told him. "I did that my whole life. I stayed quiet, kept my head down. This time, I'm standing still." Still. It rattled him. One night, around 2 a.m., his phone buzzed with a private message on LinkedIn. No name, no photo. "You got me fired. Ruined my life. I hope you're proud." He stared at the screen. His heart pounded. For a moment, the world shrank down to that one sentence. He typed, "You ruined your own life. You chose hate. I chose my mother." He hit send, blocked the account. A week later, Aaron was invited to speak at a university panel on modern racism in business. Clarissa came too, sitting in the front row, beaming at him as he answered questions about ethics, representation, and leadership. After the panel, a girl approached them, college-aged, nervous. "Miss S. Jenkins," she asked. Clarissa smiled warmly. "Yes, honey. I just wanted to say, your story made me call my grandmother for the first time in 2 years. She raised me, but I was embarrassed by her. Now, I'm just proud." Clarissa's eyes softened. She took the girl's hands in hers. "Baby," she said, "our elders don't need to be perfect. We just need to honor their journey." The girl cried. Clarissa hugged her. Aaron watched, overwhelmed. For the first time in months, he felt peace. But it didn't last. 3 days later, Aaron's office assistant burst into his meeting. "There's someone downstairs asking for you. He won't leave." "Who?" "He says his name is Greg." Aaron's stomach turned to ice. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and headed down to the lobby. Greg was waiting, but he looked nothing like the smug waiter from that night. He was thinner, gaunt, eyes sunken, clothes wrinkled, unshaven. "You got a minute?" he asked flatly. Aaron didn't answer. He just stared. Greg sighed. "Please." They walked outside, down the block, stood near a bus stop. Greg lit a cigarette. His hands shook. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I came to explain." Aaron folded his arms. "I don't need your explanation. I lost everything." Greg said, "My job, my apartment, my friends. Hell, my dad won't even return my calls. Maybe you should have thought of that before treating my mother like trash." Greg exhaled smoke. I know I messed up. But it wasn't just about race that night. Man, I was angry, bitter. My ex had just left me, and Aaron held up a hand. Don't reduce what you did to a bad day. I've had bad days. My mother's had bad years. We've never treated people like they don't deserve to exist." Greg looked down. "I went to therapy," he muttered. "Court-ordered. Anger management. They made me dig into stuff. My dad, the way I grew up, the language around my dinner table. I didn't even realize how deep it was. But that night your mother walked in. Proud, beautiful, confident. And I hated that I didn't have that. I hated how small she made me feel just by being who she was." Aaron stared at him for a long time. "Do you want forgiveness?" he asked. Greg's eyes met his. "No," he said. "I just wanted you to know. I'm trying." Aaron nodded slowly. "Then keep trying. But don't expect applause." He turned and walked away. Greg didn't follow. That night, Clarissa was watching TV when Aaron stopped by. He poured himself a glass of water, leaned against the kitchen counter, and finally told her about the encounter. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "Did he apologize?" "Not really. He just wanted to explain." Clarissa sipped her tea. "Did it help?" Aaron shrugged. "Maybe. I don't know. I'm still angry." She looked at him. "It's okay to be angry, baby. Just don't let it make a home inside you." He sat beside her. "You ever wanted to get revenge?" he asked. She laughed softly. Every time someone followed me around a store. Every time a job interview ended the moment they saw my face. Every time a teacher asked me if I was really your mother. Aaron looked at her, and she patted his knee. Then I'd go home, cook dinner, kiss you goodnight, and remind myself that we were still rising. Aaron blinked back, a sudden sting in his eyes. She leaned her head against his shoulder. You made me proud that night, Aaron, but you make me proud every day. Months passed. The Clarissa Foundation awarded its first round of scholarships to 20 high school students across Charleston. At the ceremony, each student got to speak for 1 minute. One girl said, I'm going to be a civil rights lawyer, just like Mr. Jenkins. A boy said, this scholarship means I don't have to work nights and fall asleep in class anymore. Clarissa sat on stage, holding tissues, wiping tears every 30 seconds. Later, Aaron stood beside her as she handed out the awards. He whispered, you're crying more than the kids. She laughed. I'm old. I'm allowed. Then one student stepped up and said, this is for my mom. She works at Le Chateau. She saw what happened that night. She said, you changed the whole place. They fired the manager too. Clarissa froze. They did. The boy nodded. They brought in new owners. Even did anti-bias training. My mom said it actually feels different now. Like safer. Clarissa turned to Aaron, eyes wide. He smiled. Sometimes, he said, a single night can change more than we think. That evening, long after the scholarship ceremony, Aaron drove Clarissa home. She was quiet for most of the ride, her fingers gently brushing the embroidered fabric of her purse. You okay, Ma? He asked, glancing at her through the mirror. She smiled but didn't answer right away. I've been thinking, she finally said, about how sometimes things come back around. Aaron raised a brow. Like what? She looked out the window, like how I used to work in the kitchen at Le Chateau. Aaron nearly slammed the brakes. Wait, what? Clarissa chuckled. A long time ago, before they remodeled it. Before it became what it is now. I was 27, pregnant with you. He stared at her, stunned. I scrubbed floors there, she continued. Cleaned grease traps, did dishes. I remember the old chef, Mr. Delacroix. He'd sneak me extra bread to take home. But the others, the staff, the way they looked at me, same way Greg did. Like I didn't belong in that space. Like I was dirt. Aaron's jaw tightened. Why didn't you ever tell me? Clarissa sighed. Because you were born to rise. I didn't want you looking back. But you never got justice for that. She met his eyes. Maybe. But you did. That quiet truth hung between them as he pulled up to her driveway. Before she got out, she touched his hand. I don't want revenge, Aaron. I want renewal. I want us to keep turning ugly things into beautiful beginnings. He nodded slowly. We will. A few days later, Aaron received an email from a young writer working at the Charleston Post and Courier. She'd been following his story. She wanted to publish a full feature about Clarissa, not just the restaurant incident, but her entire life. Aaron brought the proposal to Clarissa that evening. They want to call it The Mother Who Started a Movement, he said, sliding the email across the table. Clarissa put on her glasses, read it carefully, then looked up. Will it help people? She asked. Yes, he said. Then let them write. The article exploded across social media. It included photos of Clarissa from her youth working 2 jobs, holding baby Aaron on her hip, smiling in spite of exhaustion. The public was moved by her strength, her grace, and the quiet fire that lived behind her warm demeanor. Messages flooded in. This woman is my hero. I see my mom in her. We don't deserve women like Clarissa, but I'm so glad she exists. They invited her to speak at colleges, to write a book. Oprah's team even reached out for an interview, but Clarissa refused most of it. I'm not here to be famous, she told Aaron. I'm here to serve, quietly, consistently. And serve she did. The foundation expanded. She mentored dozens of girls each week. She visited public schools. She worked with local leaders on systemic reforms. But one invitation changed everything. Le Chateau sent her a formal letter. They wanted to honor her, not as an apology, but as a renaming. They had changed ownership, management, policies, and now they wanted to rename the restaurant to reflect their new commitment to justice. They wanted to call it Clarissa's Table. Aaron couldn't believe it when he read the letter. "What do you think?" he asked her. Clarissa laughed. "I think it's poetic to have once cleaned the corners of that place on my knees, and now have my name above the door." Aaron grinned. "So you'll do it," she nodded. "Only on one condition." The reopening was quiet. No press, no flashing lights, just a new wooden sign above the door, "Clarissa's Table, a place for everyone." The inside was transformed. Diverse artwork on the walls. A new menu that featured dishes from Charleston's Black culinary traditions. Scholarships offered from each meal purchased. And in the corner, a plaque in honor of Clarissa Jenkins for teaching us that dignity is non-negotiable. Greg, he wasn't there, but Aaron had heard he was working at a rehab center now, volunteering, quietly making amends. Aaron didn't seek him out. Some chapters don't need closure. On the 1-year anniversary of the incident, Aaron hosted a dinner, not at the restaurant, not at a fancy venue. At home, he cooked. Clarissa brought her sweet tea and her famous peach cobbler. Old friends came, scholarship students, Miss Maya, even Maya's great niece, who wanted to be a chef. They sat around the long table Aaron had built himself last Christmas. Aaron raised his glass. "To my mother," he said. The woman who walked into a restaurant expecting dinner and walked out sparking a movement. Clarissa blushed. "Boy, you better stop before I cry in this collard greens." Laughter echoed. As the meal went on, music played, people danced. Light filled every corner of the house. And in the middle of it all stood Clarissa. Not just the woman who had been refused service, but the woman who now served others endlessly, with grace, with strength, with pride. And as the night stretched on, Aaron stood by the window, watching the stars, thinking about legacy, about fire, about how it only takes one person standing up to light 1,000 candles in the dark. That night, he smiled, because he knew she had always been the flame.